The muffled thumps against weathered canvas, a championship bout abandoned mid-match. When Elias Mercer stumbles into the empty boxing gym at 3 a.m., the last person he expects to find pummeling the heavy bag is soft-spoken librarian Nora Chen. But those aren't a beginner's hands, and the technique she's mastered could save more than just her reputation. Some secrets hit harder than fists. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. Rain tapped against glass panes high above the university library's main floor. Nora Chen shelved another biography, noting how the drop in barometric pressure always emptied the stacks. Just past noon on a Tuesday, and only 3 students remained, all huddled at back tables beneath the Renaissance architecture mural. She tucked an escaped strand of jet black hair behind her ear. Her cardigan, oversized and faded blue, hung loose over plain slacks. Nothing about her appearance commanded attention. That was deliberate. The meeting's been moved to the main conference room. Professor Radcliffe's clipped British accent scattered her thoughts. The head librarian checked his watch with theatrical impatience. The benefactors are already waiting. You were informed, yes? Nora blinked. No, Do hurry then. He strode off, leather shoes clicking against marble. The benefactors. Right. The university's wealthiest alumni had gathered to determine funding allocations for the coming year. As the newest staff librarian, only 8 months in, Nora had prepared a modest proposal for expanding their digital archives. She gathered her notes with trembling fingers and hurried across campus, raindrops darkening her sweater as she ran. By the time she reached the administration building, her presentation materials were damp at the edges. The conference room fell silent when she entered. 12 faces turned toward her. Tailored suits, perfect posture, eyes narrowed with immediate assessment. Ah, Ms. Chen. Dean Hargrove gestured vaguely. We were about to proceed without you. I apologize for the delay. Her voice emerged softer than intended. There was a miscommunication about, yes, fine. He waved dismissively. You'll present after Dr. Wells. Take a seat. The only available chair was beside Sebastian Wells, the university's golden child, 42, devastatingly handsome, and recently recruited from Oxford to elevate their classics department. His book on ancient combat techniques had just hit the New York Times bestseller list. The university couldn't stop talking about him. Late on your first presentation, Sebastian murmured as she sat beside him. His smile never reached his eyes. Bold strategy. She opened her mouth to explain, but stopped herself. What was the point? For the next hour, she watched other department heads deliver polished proposals. Then Sebastian rose, commanding the room with practiced confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of knowledge preservation, we must think beyond digitizing pages. We must preserve experiential understanding. His presentation unfolded with multimedia flourishes. He proposed a multi-million-dollar classical combat center, where ancient fighting techniques would be taught alongside their historical contexts. This isn't just academic, he continued. I've spent 20 years mastering these forms, the pankration of ancient Greece, the gladiatorial techniques of Rome, skills lost to time until now. To demonstrate, he executed a flawless sequence of movements that left the benefactors murmuring appreciatively. When Nora's turn came, she spoke quietly about digital accessibility, about preservation methods. Her words vanished into the air-conditioned silence. How quaint, said one benefactor, examining manicured nails. But hardly revolutionary, Sebastian cleared his throat. Perhaps Ms. Chen isn't familiar with true academic innovation. The library is rather traditional. Polite laughter rippled through the room. Thank you, Ms. Chen, Dean Hargrove said. We'll be in touch. She gathered her papers and left, cheeks burning. Outside, the rain had stopped, but darkened clouds still hung overhead. Nora took the long way back to her apartment, past the athletics complex. Through the windows, she could see student athletes training, running, jumping, fighting. She pressed her palm against cold glass and watched the university's boxing team practice. Their coach shouted instructions as they shadowboxed across the floor. Footwork, it's all in the footwork. Pivot, don't just stand there. Nora's fingers twitched at her side. The next afternoon found her in a cramped office trying to salvage her proposal. "Chen!" Professor Radcliffe appeared in the doorway. "Emergency department meeting. Now." "In the conference room," faculty members whispered excitedly. On a large screen at the front, a spreadsheet displayed funding allocations. The library's request showed $0 awarded, and there, highlighted in bold green, Classical Combat Center, $4.3 million. Dean Hargrove beamed. "Thanks to Dr. Wells's exceptional proposal, we've secured our largest single donation in university history." Sebastian stood to appreciative applause. "I'm humbled by your confidence. To celebrate, I'm hosting a demonstration this Friday, a proper inauguration for what will become the crown jewel of this institution." His eyes found Nora's across the room. "Everyone's invited, of course, even our quieter departments." Laughter. Again. That evening, Nora didn't go home. Instead, she walked 6 blocks to a rundown gym tucked between a laundromat and a discount furniture store. Martinez Boxing, the faded sign read. A bell jingled as she entered. The smell hit her first, sweat-soaked canvas, leather, and liniment. 3 boxers worked heavy bags in the corner. An elderly man watched from a folding chair. "Nora." He nodded. "Once." "Been a while." "Hello, coach." She shifted her bag nervously. "I was wondering if—" He assessed her with eyes that had seen thousands of fights. "Your old locker still has your gear. Been saving it, just in case." Her shoulders relaxed. "Slightly. Thank you, Miguel. You still got it?" he asked as she turned toward the locker room. Nora paused. "I guess we'll find out." Friday arrived with unexpected sunshine. The university courtyard had been transformed with a raised platform, seating for 200, and banners announcing the Classical Combat Center's impending construction. Nora sat in the back row, heart hammering. She'd chosen a slightly nicer cardigan today, dark green with wooden buttons, but otherwise looked the same as always. Invisible. Sebastian took the stage to enthusiastic applause. He'd dressed in fitted athletic wear that showcased his physique. "What we've lost in our modern education is bodily knowledge," he began. "The Greeks understood that the mind and body are one. To truly understand history, we must embody it." He demonstrated techniques, explaining their historical contexts. His movements were precise, controlled. These forms weren't just sport, they were survival. But who among us today truly understands that physical imperative? He scanned the audience with a showman's practiced eye. "Perhaps a volunteer could help me demonstrate. Someone," his gaze settled on Nora, "someone perhaps not from athletics, to show how these techniques can be taught to anyone." Her stomach dropped. "Miss Chen." Sebastian extended his hand. "Would you honor us?" 100 heads turned. Whispers swept through the crowd. "The librarian? This'll be good." Poor thing. Nora rose slowly. She could feel every eye tracking her movement as she climbed the steps to the platform. "Nothing to fear," Sebastian assured her, voice pitched to carry. "Just follow my instructions." He positioned her in the center of the stage, adjusted her stance with mildly condescending touches. "Now these techniques begin with proper posture. Ms. Chen, if you could try to maintain this position." He demonstrated a basic stance. Nora mirrored it perfectly. Something flickered across Sebastian's face. Surprise quickly masked. "Very good. Now for something a bit more challenging." This defensive position was used by Spartan warriors. Again, she matched his form flawlessly. A crease appeared between his brows. "Interesting. Let's try a more advanced sequence." He launched into a complex combination, blocks transitioning to strikes, footwork, shifting weight efficiently. Nora followed each movement with fluid precision. The audience had gone oddly quiet. "You've done this before," Sebastian said, voice lower now. Nora maintained her stance. "A little." His smile tightened. "Then perhaps a practical demonstration. A light sparring match to show the effectiveness of these techniques. A trap. He'd showcase his superior skill, re-establish dominance. She should decline, walk away, return to her quiet life." "All right," she heard herself say. Sebastian's smile widened as he backed up, creating space between them on the platform. "I'll go at quarter speed, of course, just defensive techniques." Whatever you think best, Nora replied. They began circling each other. Sebastian launched a deliberately slow jab, telegraphed, easy to evade. Nora slipped it with such economical movement that it seemed she'd barely moved at all. He frowned, tried a combination, still slowed for demonstration purposes. She deflected each strike with textbook precision. "Well," Sebastian said, voice tight with annoyance, "you're a quick study." A murmur rippled through the audience. "Perhaps we could show them something more dynamic," he continued. "Unless you'd prefer to stop?" Nora met his gaze evenly. "I'm comfortable." Continuing, Sebastian abandoned all pretense of instruction. His next combination came at full speed, a jab cross hook meant to overwhelm. Nora's response emerged from muscle memory, built over thousands of hours. She slipped the jab, parried the cross, and ducked beneath the hook. Her counter was so instinctive, she couldn't have stopped it. A perfect check hook that stopped just millimeters from Sebastian's jaw. Gasps erupted from the audience. Sebastian stepped back, face flushed. "Where did you learn that?" The question hung in the air. Nora felt sweat beading at her temples. This hadn't been the plan. She'd meant only to defend, not reveal herself. But something had shifted. A lifetime of silence pressing against the walls of her chest. "I was national champion," she said quietly. 3 years running." Sebastian blinked. "What?" "Women's division. Before I started my master's degree." Each word emerged stronger than the last. "Ranked 3rd internationally before. I retired." Dean Hargrove stood from his front row seat. "Ms. Chen, are you saying—" "Nora Swift Chen?" a voice called from the crowd. An older benefactor with white hair rose slowly. "Detroit Golden Gloves? Quarterfinals against Rodriguez in 2017? Nora nodded once. The man turned to his companions. "I was there. Fastest hands I've ever seen." Sebastian's complexion had gone from flushed to ashen. "This is ridiculous. A few amateur matches, hardly—" 27 professional bouts, Nora corrected. 24 wins, 18 by knockout. The courtyard erupted in exclamations and hurried phone searches. Sebastian raised his hands. "Even if that's true, classical combat techniques are entirely different from modern boxing. My research incorporates pankration," Nora interrupted, "which combined wrestling and striking. The ancient Greeks didn't separate them the way we do." She shifted her stance subtly, feet positioned in a way immediately recognizable to any serious martial artist. The oldest known Pancratian stance, from a relief dated to 400 BCE. Her voice carried across the suddenly silent courtyard. The Romans adopted it largely unchanged, as evidenced by the Borghese gladiator sculpture. Sebastian's mouth opened, closed. "Your book mentions it on page 84, Nora continued. "Though you mistranslated the primary source, Aristotle didn't write that the lead foot should be slightly angled. The correct translation is weighted toward the outer edge. A small distinction, but critical for proper weight distribution." Someone in the front row whispered, "Holy shit." Dean Hargrove cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, why didn't you mention any of this in your proposal?" "My proposal was about the library," she said simply. "This is something else." The white-haired benefactor approached the stage. "Young lady, would you be willing to demonstrate a few techniques? Properly, I mean." Nora hesitated, then nodded. For the next 15 minutes, she moved across the platform with a grace born from thousands of hours of training. She demonstrated not just boxing techniques, but transitions between various martial disciplines. Her explanations were precise, scholarly, connecting physical movements to their historical contexts with far greater depth than Sebastian had managed. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Sebastian had retreated to the edge of the stage, jaw clenched, hands balled into fists. Dean Hargrove approached with several benefactors in tow. "Ms. Chen, this is extraordinary. Why keep such talents hidden?" She smoothed her cardigan with trembling hands. "I came here to be a librarian, sir. That's what matters to me now. But surely both could coexist. Your knowledge, combined with your athletic background." He exchanged meaningful glances with the donors. "We should discuss revising the combat center proposal. Perhaps a joint leadership position?" Sebastian stepped forward. Dean Hargrove, I hardly think Ms. Chen could lead the practical instruction, the white-haired benefactor interrupted, while Dr. Wells continues his valuable research. The steel in his voice made it clear this wasn't merely a suggestion. Nora's heart pounded in her ears, all eyes on her, the very scenario she'd spent years avoiding. Yet for once the attention didn't feel like judgment. I would need to think about it, she managed. The library is still my priority. Dean Hargrove nodded. Of course, we'll discuss details Monday. Perhaps additional funding for your digital archive as well? As the crowd dispersed, Nora gathered her belongings with shaking hands. The adrenaline crash left her lightheaded. Ms. Chen. Sebastian stood nearby, expression unreadable. She braced herself for bitter words, for threats or dismissal. Instead, he extended his hand. I've never seen transitions that clean between Greco-Roman and Pancratian techniques. How did you develop that footwork pattern? Genuine interest had replaced his earlier condescension. Nora studied him for a moment before accepting the handshake. Trial and error, mostly error. His laugh held surprising warmth. I'd like to hear more if you're willing. Monday, she said, after I speak with the dean. That evening, Nora returned to Martinez Boxing. The old coach watched her wrap her hands. With practiced efficiency, so, he said as she approached a heavy bag. You finally showed them. Nora struck the bag with a perfect cross. The impact reverberated through the empty gym. Not all, she replied. Just enough. Miguel nodded approvingly. Sometimes enough is all you need. 6 months later, Nora stood before a class of 20 students in the newly constructed Classical Combat Center. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined one wall. State-of-the-art training equipment filled the space. A research library, connected directly to the main university library's digital systems, occupied an adjacent room. The integration of mind and body wasn't a philosophical abstraction to ancient cultures, she explained. It was lived reality. The students watched attentively as she demonstrated a technique. In the observation area, Sebastian made notes for their co-authored paper, the first of several that would establish their department's revolutionary approach. Nora still wore cardigans, still spoke softly when the situation allowed. Her office in the library remained her primary workspace 3 days a week, but now when she walked across campus, people noticed her. Not because she demanded attention, but because they'd learned to look more carefully at what stood before them. After class, a freshman lingered behind. Professor Chen, I was wondering. The girl twisted her hands nervously. I've never been very athletic, but I was thinking maybe... Nora smiled gently. Most champions begin as beginners. The only requirement is showing up. Later, as she packed her gear, Sebastian appeared in the doorway. The dean approved our research grant, he announced. Full funding for the symposium. That's excellent news. He leaned against the doorframe. You know, when we first met, I thought I had you figured out. Most people do, Nora replied. It's easier that way. Easier but inaccurate. He shook his head ruefully. I've been wondering how many other Nora Chens I've overlooked. She shouldered her bag. Probably quite a few. Outside, the evening sky glowed orange and pink. Students crisscrossed the quad, each carrying their own hidden depths beneath visible surfaces. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in being seen, but in choosing when to reveal yourself. The world rushes to judge by covers, by bindings, by things easily catalogued and shelved. But true wisdom lies in recognizing that every person is a library of untold stories, waiting for the right moment to open their pages.